Hey y'all, I'm here today with Cliff Wilson. Really excited. If you guys have seen my post recently, I just started working with him. And we're both really excited to kind of join up together. We have some cool ideas for this year, but I really wanted to get his take on a few different things for training intensity and just training in general, like how to improve your training. So there's two things that I know that you're kind of big on that I wanted to kind of talk about, just because I've seen in my experience with clients as well that this is really important. So the first thing would just be like sodium in general. We both know that it's good, obviously, for pumps and hydration, and just honestly, like, I just feel better. I feel like as an athlete, like when you properly, like, I wouldn't say sodiumated, when you have a proper amount of sodium. Sodiumized. So what are your thoughts, protocols?
Well, I would say one of my biggest observations with working with competitors is specifically women in general shy away from sodium. They tell me that it makes them feel bloated or it makes them feel heavier, but I think they're kind of missing the boat on some of the benefits that sodium has, because like you said, it is a primary regulator of blood volume. So when your sodium is really low, then your blood volume is going to be very low and you're going to have a hard time getting a pump. So that's a big one right there. So I don't know about you, but a lot of times when I actually look at the diets of a lot of the women that I start working with, a lot of times they're at 1,000 milligrams or even less per day.
Very low. And I know I used to fall into that boat too before I started competing, and like before my first ever peak week, and I didn't track sodium because I don't track sodium. And I cook a lot of my own food. So if you cook a lot of your own foods and you don't salt them, you have a pretty low sodium diet. It's only really when you eat like more packaged stuff that it's easier to kind of like add up. But until I realized, like, okay, I'm eating semi-low sodium, and then I added some, and I was like, oh wait, wow, I look and feel a lot better.
Well, yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Well, and then another thing that people miss the boat on is sodium is also involved in helping carbohydrates make their way into the muscle cells. So that's going to help those carbohydrates make their way into the muscle cells, help with glycogen, help with training, help with pump, help with fullness, which are obviously all great things.
Yeah, especially if you're dieting, and that's something that can be like easily lost. And like when you feel flat, like if you feel and look flat, you typically just don't look your best, and you always just kind of look like a little off. So
there's a little, you can always spot, or I can always spot when somebody has a very low sodium intake, because there's a certain softness to their physique that can't really be replicated by anything else. It's a real flat look. Now, one thing I will say is that when you go from having very low sodium intake and then you increase it, you're going to see a little increase on the scale, because water is going to follow wherever sodium goes, which, as we've already said, will help with blood flow and increase that. So you may see an increase, but just know that this isn't fat. It's not fat.
It's not, especially if something happens overnight. Like weight fluctuations are huge, and people will have weight fluctuations like if they go out to eat or they're on a vacation or something, or anytime they're out of like their norm. So if you have a weight fluctuation from sodium, that is a normal response. But you know, if you kind of have it more regulated, and if it's chronically higher, not exorbitant, but a little bit higher, then I think you're gonna be okay. And most people aren't even like salt sensitive, so like for people out there, like I've heard so many crazy things about salt and like, you know, like
fear of it. Well, and here's another thing too: is if you have a consistently high sodium intake, your body becomes very efficient at flushing out any excess. So also, a lot of times people will notice if they have a very low sodium intake, and then like you said, they go out to eat, their weight balloons up the next day. But if you have somebody that has a very high sodium intake on a daily basis, they go out to eat, they hardly notice anything because their body is now efficient at flushing out any excess sodium.
It's kind of like calories too. Like if you're used to eating like higher calorie and then you have like a big meal, it just kind of rolls off. You know, you're like, okay,
absolutely.
You know, whatever. But if you're on like, you know, very low calories, very low carbs, and then you have like a huge binge like blowout, then you're gonna kind of see those repercussions. So
yeah,
sodium has a lot of benefits, and that's just something that I know that you've talked about before. And so I wanted to like touch on it. And there's no recommendations. I get this a lot, like how much should you have? And you know, everyone's gonna be a little bit different as far as like their preferences. So I don't want to like force anyone to have like too low or too high. Do you have kind of things that you suggest?
Like you said, it can be a pretty wide range, and it's a little difficult, but it's a little bit of trial and error to see what feels best for you. I would say, you know, start by adding a little bit of extra sodium. Salt your food if you like the taste. If you don't like the taste, I've even put some in my pre-workout to help with the pump. So you can kind of work your way up a little bit. It depends. Some of the flavor.
So terrible.
Salty strawberry pre-workout.
Oh my god. I saw John make a video the other day. He had like just salt in his hand. He just like ate it. I was like,
Yeah. Well, that's another thing too. Is competitors like to cut it before a show, but I actually increase it before their show because it helps with the pump.
And it helps so much.
Competitors backstage look at my clients like they're crazy because they are just eating salt straight out of the hand, washing it down with water.
Yeah.
But I would say start slow, increase slowly, see how you feel, and find your good spot.
Yeah, it goes from there, and make sure you're hydrated too, to kind of keep all that like.
Oh, absolutely.
Moving.
Yeah,
don't triple your sodium intake and not have any water during
Yeah.
the day. That probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Somebody dies of dehydration and say Cliff and Lauren told them to do it.
Just like that pretzel I ate on the way back from we're in St. Louis for Summer Smash, and we were at a baseball game, and there was this fabulous pretzel that I really wanted, but it was basically like the Dead Sea on a on a pretzel, but it was amazing. So the second thing I want to talk about, and this is something that we've kind of talked about with training, and I talk with my clients about this, is just general like training intensity and like training hard. So if you're a power lifter, training intensity would mean like higher like percentage of your like 1RM, but just in general, like think about broad like intensity training hard. As females, again, not picking on females, but just a lot of times, especially when you're dieting, it's like low carb, or low calorie, and then all the cardio, like jump on a box, like, and you're trying to tighten up that way, and they completely ignore weight training. Or they only do like one type of training. And I really try to steer my clients away from that just because I'm like, muscle is a metabolically very active tissue. It's very hard to like break it down and repair it, so that's going to keep your metabolism going. So I know that you've drafted up something for me for training, and there's some really cool like techniques in there too, to just keep the intensity high. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you nailed it. Keeping training intensity higher is typically a pitfall that I see from a lot of female clients and female competitors. Mm-hmm. And don't get us wrong, guys make a ton of mistakes too. It's that
these two things that we brought up were both like, you know.
Guys tend to make whole new set of mistakes.
Yeah.
But these two, I find that a lot of women do focus more on specific movements rather than focusing on the intensity of those movements. One thing I always say is that I could give someone the perfect plan and they could execute it half-assed, or I could give someone a really terrible plan, and if they go all out, the terrible plan will win every time. It's just the way that goes. And also, I do see this with some guys also, because we also know that you need to increase your load over time, add weight to the bar. Yeah. But sometimes I see people become very obsessed with planning out the perfect program. It's almost like they forget that training hard needs to be the foundation of that program.
Yeah. Now, there's definitely a lot of things, and I just know that, especially when people are dieting, like when you're, you know, off season, you're eating, you're kind of like feel good, so it's like easier to like push stuff. But then I feel like as soon as people start dieting, they're like, oh, I don't want to get any bulkier. I don't want to get any, and I'm like, why are you doing so many high reps? Like, why is it, you know, and I like having a mix of everything. So basically when people ask, like, what should training look like? It should really be a mix of, like, heavy, moderate, and light stuff, like, all kind of blended together, obviously in different waves. But, you know, there's a time and a place for everything, but training hard should always be there. And most likely you're going to probably lean out better, because your body is obviously going to adapt less to hard resistance training versus like cardio or like dropping food, which your body adapts to very easily. So you can always kind of like change up your training and make it like this challenging stimulus for your body while you're dieting.
Yeah, well, and you know, I find it interesting. I find beginners tend to almost overdo it with their intensity because they're so motivated. The first year they're training, they're like, I'm just going to make all the progress in the world. I'm going to win it now. And so they're probably overdoing it with the intensity at times. They do about 5 or 6 forced reps. Once they hit failure, they have their partner dragging the bar off their chest on bench press. But then I find that as people come into their own and they train longer, more for a longer period of time, years, they almost tend to back off of that a little bit because they realize consistency is probably the most important thing. But I do think that the longer you train is when you really need to kind of push those limits with intensity, because it's harder to create a stimulus to create that adaptation, the adaptation in your body. So, if you've been training for 5, 6, 7 plus years, sometimes I'll ask people, when was the last time you actually took a set to absolute complete failure and or had a forced rep added on it? And a lot of people can't even tell me when the last time they did that was. So that shows you how some people really aren't training that hard as they think.
Yeah, and there's definitely, obviously, again, like this is geared towards like everyone is like general stuff. if you are a power lifter or Olympic lifter, you know, definitely don't take movements like that to failure all the time. But we're just talking about in general, of course, more specifically towards like physique kind of style competitors. So I think that for this video's purposes, like those are two ways to increase just like training in general, like improve your training, increase your training. That's not even English. Improve your training overall. So making sure that like sodium is regulated, possibly adding a little bit to it, making sure hydration is on point, and then really just trying to challenge yourself with training. And that can be done in a variety of ways. You know, that can be pushing it with like heavier weight, that can be doing drop sets, that can be doing total failure. You know, there's so many different techniques, but try something new. And don't just kind of like go in and like, yeah, I'm having good sessions. Like you need to like really try to kill it, especially if you're someone who has a more like adaptive metabolism. Like I just find with a lot of those clients that they can't really just kind of go in and do whatever. Like they really have to kill it every session, otherwise their body's like, oh, we got this shit figured out.
You know, I was just talking with a client of mine. I find that some people in general are responders to stimulus, and some are not. And you find this a lot. People with faster metabolisms tend to not be as muscular, where they don't respond as well to food, they don't respond as well to training intensity, so it just means you need more of it. And I'm not naturally a big guy myself, and I find that I can tolerate a lot of intensity and a lot of volume compared to bigger guys, just because my body doesn't respond to stimulus, so I need more of it. So that might be something to consider as well. If you do have a faster metabolism or you're naturally smaller, you might need more. So.
Yeah. So all really good tips. Thank you so much, Cliff. Really excited that we're here and could do some videos for you guys. Any questions, let us know. Instagram is?
At CW Team Wilson.
I'm trying to get him to use this more. So everyone comment that Cliff needs to use Insta Stories.
Insta Story. Insta Story. I'll get there.
Thank you guys so much.